we are live again, so we don't have time to breathe, you know. But really looking forward to your presentation, John. Great having you with us from San Francisco. And yes, you are connecting to the previous presentation of Sandra. You will talk about voice. So really looking forward to your presentation. And the stage is yours, John.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for having me, first of all. It's morning here for me, but good evening to those of you that are in Europe or in more faraway places. I was also just going to mention, I saw that Nicholas is based in Lima. That's actually where my company is based also. I've been in San Francisco for a couple months, but I'm typically out of Peru. So nice to see that there's another Peru-based person here. So I'm going to talk today about voice apps and specifically testing and monitoring. I'll do a little intro on voice apps overall, and then get into what we do and why we think testing and monitoring is so important. So with that, I'm going to share my screen here. And there we go. All right, so just a quick introduction on us. Again, I'm John Kelvie. I'm the founder and CEO of Bespoken. We help developers build better voice apps. We do this by providing monitoring and testing tools. We're a recognized vendor of Amazon and Google. We have over 900 apps that we're monitoring currently. We have over 2,000 developers using our software. And in addition to that, we have a long history with speech recognition and AI. I was actually doing interactive audio ads for over 3 years. Those were for mobile. It was a pretty neat application that we did there. What you could do is, if you're listening to the Slacker or Spotify, one of our ads would come on, and it would say something like, if you'd like to get 2 pizzas for $10, just say call now. And you could say call now, and we would then connect you to a pizza place. And it's a neat use of speech recognition, and because it was advertising, we really learned a lot about scaling and testing of speech recognition in AI-based apps. And that sort of expertise that we gained from that, we've really brought that to bear on what we do with Bespoken. So first off, just a level set, you know, what is a voice-first device? I mean, I'm here talking about voice apps. Where do you actually use voice apps? So I have a picture here that includes, you can see the Amazon lineup, Google Home down here on the bottom left, and then Apple on the bottom right. This isn't even the entire Amazon lineup of Echo devices. They have the Echo Connect, the Echo Look, which has a camera in it, the Dash Wand. So a whole slew of different form factors. It's not just smart speakers that you can use to interact via voice. Google has 3 different smart speakers, the Max, the regular Google Home, and the Mini. And then Apple just came out with their HomePod, which is a hi-fi device. And in addition to this, you hear rumors about companies working on additional smart speakers. So Facebook is supposedly going to come out with one this year. And even just yesterday, I was reading that Spotify is working on a smart speaker, which is interesting. I mean, they're certainly one of the most popular use cases for it. But voice-first devices are not just about smart speakers. I've put a picture up here that includes many other voice-first or voice-enabled devices. And so these are all items that have microphones built into them that you can communicate with Alexa or Google Assistant. And so you see on the top left there, a refrigerator, that's an LG, and that has, that's Alexa enabled. BMW as well as many other car manufacturers, are integrating Alexa and Google Assistant into their cars. The picture here, there's a smart mirror, and that's part of a smart bathroom that's offered by Kohler. That allows you to control things like, the temperature of water in a shower, gives you a flash briefing while you're shaving. Sort of interesting ways to integrate voice into your life there. A smart thermostat. Over here on the bottom left, the Nest device. And I'll even throw in here, this is not a picture of it, but yesterday a company, I think it's called Ministry of Supply, announced a smart jacket. So a smart jacket that would allow you to, it has heating built into it, and you can turn up or turn down the heating in your jacket. A lamp, glasses, and then last but certainly not least, your phone that has Google Assistant frequently built into it. If it's an Android device, you obviously have Siri, and Alexa is also getting integrated there. So overall, the thing I want you to take away from this is that there's just a huge number of devices that are not just smart speakers that are being voice enabled. And this is not even counting all the devices that you can control via voice, which might be in your home. Things like light bulbs and smart locks and smart plugs. There's just a huge slew of things that you can actually control via Alexa. So there's a very big footprint for these devices, which is a great thing for the future of voice. And so just some numbers on that and why you should be interested in this market. There's forecasts that there's going to be 128 million Alexa devices alone to be sold by 2020, 94 million smart speakers. This year, 3 million Echo Dots on Prime Day alone were sold. There's hundreds of devices integrated already. I went through some of those, and there's over 25,000 Alexa skills published, and that's really just in the US. If you count everything that's in Germany, that's in Japan, and some of the other localities for Alexa, that number is even higher. So it's really a rapidly growing market. You see as many as 20% of mobile queries are made via voice today. You see on this chart lots of growth there. And I would just insert, this is my own editorial, but I think that it's easy to imagine, it's logical to imagine a future in which this is growing even faster. So if you think about mobile devices and smartphones, how popular they are, most of us have just one smartphone. But it's not hard to imagine a future in which people have many different voice-first devices. If you look at that previous slide, or those previous slides, many people have one or more smart speakers already. Perhaps you'd have a smart speaker or some sort of microphone in every room in your home. You can have it in your car, at your place of work. You can have telephones controlled by voice. Really, it just runs the gamut, so that the upper limit on what the market is for voice-first devices and voice-based devices, it may really far exceed what you have with mobile. So people would consider this market a massive success if it reached the footprint of the 2 billion mobile devices. But it may actually be that 2 billion is really a floor as opposed to a ceiling for voice devices. So a lot to be excited about there. And because I am focused on the development side, I want to tell you about how these devices work and a little bit about the technical architecture. So this is a high-level overview, but you have your typical way that this interacts is you have a device, it's sending audio that it captures from you. It sends that to the automated speech recognition that turns that speech into text. The text goes through an NLU machine, and that in turn forwards it on to either built-in capabilities of the platform or, and this is what's most relevant to us, to your skill. So if you've written your own voice app and I'm using the terminology of Amazon here, the skill, but it's also called an action on Google. This is where it comes into play. From the natural language NLU piece is meant for your skill. It'll send it to that, and that's where you have a chance to do something with it. And so when building these voice apps, the user experience is really critical, and it's not that well understood at this point. I would say that the design aspects are something that people are constantly learning and constantly evolving, and people have already figured out, or there's been several iterations of different approaches to the usability part, and we think that's fantastic. And we have our own point of view on that, and it's a very interesting conversation around what creates the best conversations on voice apps. But just as important, though it's sometimes overlooked, is performance. And by performance, we're talking about apps that respond rapidly and also respond correctly. So if you have bugs in your app, or if it's returning errors, or it's returning very slowly, all of these things are going to be a problem for your user, and they're going to damage the overall experience that your users are having. And so just one recent headline that I think sort of illustrates this is that Amazon is now working on its own custom AI chips for Alexa. That's a big investment on their part, but the reason why they're doing this is that they see investing in this hardware as critical to providing the best possible response time for their users. So they're going to start doing some of those AI pieces, that speech recognition, that natural language part, directly on the device. And that's going to mean that you can get a quicker response as a user. And so when we're thinking about performance, how do sort of quality issues, how do those manifest? So over here on the left, this is an example of a payload that would come from Alexa to your app that represents an error. And so this is JSON, and it's saying you got an invalid response and your URL was not using HTTPS. So this is pretty easy to fix, and if we happen to see this, it's not going to be much of a problem. But a lot of times we don't actually see the error. And so instead, the way the error manifests is in a bad review on our skill or app page from a user. And so people will say things like it doesn't work, or it doesn't work on a particular form factor, or what the heck is wrong with this app or the developer that made it. You know, and this is really one of the worst ways to get feedback, because you don't want bad reviews. If people then come and are trying to decide whether or not they want to use your skill and they see a bunch of bad reviews, they're going to be less likely to use it. Additionally, other stakeholders may be upset to see bad reviews for your skill. If you're an agency that builds skills for others, and you're looking to partner with Amazon, they're going to look at those reviews for choosing how much they're going to value you as part of that. If you are building skills for customers, they're going to look at those reviews and make a judgment about what type of job you did. So you really want to come up with ways to identify these errors where your users are not the ones that are reporting it, and are especially not the ones, or especially not reporting it via poor reviews. So you really want to be proactive. And so what does proactivity with quality mean? Well, there's several layers to it, and we like to illustrate this via a cake. And they're manual testing, unit testing, end-to-end testing, and continuous testing. And we're going to explain each of these in the next few slides. So manual testing, this one's pretty easy. If you've been building any voice apps, I'm sure you've done this. You can use a real device, such as an Echo, obviously, or you can use virtual devices like EchoSim.io or Reverb app that runs on your phone. Those are all great ways to do manual testing with your voice. Additionally, you can use tools such as our own. We have a command line BST that you can install, and that will allow you to test just by typing. And then we turn what you type into payloads that are sent to your skill. And so that sort of voice-free way of testing is also very helpful. So for any skill, of course, in any voice app, you're going to do some initial manual testing, but you don't want to stop there. Automated unit testing is really an essential part, and automated unit testing is focused on identifying any issues with your code. And so it's about testing it in isolation and ensuring that your code by itself is working correctly. And we really recommend that people do this right from the start in their development, and then after they've built out their first version, you hook up the code coverage tools, and those code coverage tools are going to show you over time how well your testing is evolving. So you get sort of a baseline level of testing in place, and then you can improve it over time and maintain it over time using nice things like CodeCov. So unit testing is a really critical part. End-to-end testing is another critical part, and it's sort of the other side of the coin when you're talking about testing as a whole. It's the other side of the coin from unit testing, because instead of focusing on testing your code in isolation, end-to-end testing is focused on testing the entirety of your system. And so it's going to be working with the AI and the speech recognition. It's going to work with that NLU. It's going to then actually work with your skill, any dependencies that you have. A lot of people use things like Dynamo or S3 when they're building voice apps. It's going to work with all those pieces, and it's going to ensure that that entire chain is working correctly. And that's really important as well. If you test things, just your code in isolation, you're not ensuring the overall performance of your system. And in particular, I would just like to highlight that with AI, there's really some special considerations and some reasons why testing is particularly important. A lot of us are accustomed to, you do a bunch of development work, you do a regression test, you push it out the door, and then you're doing some monitoring, but basically you can forget about it. Well, with an AI system, it's a little bit different because they are based on machine learning, and machine learning inherently is based on the idea that it's going to be evolving. So there's lots of cases that we've heard reported where how a particular phrase or a particular slot that somebody might say, it changes from one week or one day to the next. And people can really be caught flat-footed by this. So you want something that can proactively test and make sure that your app is still getting the same inputs. It's still handling the speech recognition in the same way. And you can't control how the platforms change, but what you can do is make sure that you know if they're changing. That's really what you're looking to do. Another big thing with AI is you need to deal with lots of different languages and locales. It's incredible the market that you can access with Alexa and Google Assistant, but at the same time it creates challenges because people are interfacing via different languages. And lastly, people are building for multiple different platforms. Amazon and Google are the two biggest ones, but definitely Siri's out there. Facebook says that they're coming in. Having a consistent experience across these platforms is very important to people. So these are all things that you need to think about in delivering a really industrial strength voice app. I'm getting close to the question period, but just real quick, before I do a short demo, it's very important to identify bugs early, because what this slide is showing you here is they become 100 times more expensive if you wait till they're in production. If you catch a bug in the design phase, it's 1/100th of the cost of one that's in production. And I think everyone pretty much accepts that as a reason why long-term testing is so important. But this other slide is saying, this is from Ratatouille, and I like the analogy to cooking for development, which is that if you keep your workspace clear, if you do your unit testing from the outset, it's not just that you're delivering a better product, you're actually going to deliver it faster. So if you're into cooking, you'll know that if you keep your space clear as you work, you're going to get stuff done faster and higher quality. Well, the same thing is true with code. So I hope you take this as a call to action, not to just think like, oh, I'll get into that testing after I've gotten into production or after I know that there's some quality issues with my stuff. No, if you do it at the outset, it's not just that you're going to get a gain in terms of higher quality later on, you're going to get your product done faster. So there's no downside. So there's no reason not to start with these things today. And so we have a variety of tools that help with every aspect of this. We have the CLI that I mentioned that allows you to do manual testing. We have a unit testing piece, virtual Alexa and virtual Google Assistant. We have our virtual devices for end-to-end testing, and then we have validation and monitoring for continuous testing. And the continuous testing is really meant to address that last point I mentioned, which is how to be watching your app once it's live. So I'm just going to do a real quick demo of that piece. This is an example of the test script. The left-hand side is the input. The right-hand side is the expected output. Each line represents an interaction as part of an overall conversation. And this is a simple skill that's kind of like the Price is Right. So I'm going to click run here. And this, even though it's a text input that you see, this is as if I'm talking to a real Alexa device. And so I'm saying open guess the price skill. I expected to say welcome to guess the price. It asked me how many people are playing. It asked me the names. I put in 2 different names. And then I get to the fun part where it says, okay, let's start the game. Your product is Glade air freshener. And I'm supposed to guess how much Glade air freshener costs. And in this script, I'm guessing that it costs $200. Well, I was wrong. It actually only costs $1. But I just do partial matches here. So these tests all passed. As long as this is included in the response, it passes. And I now have assurance that my skill is working. And using our monitoring, you can actually enable these tests to be running on a regular basis, and we'll report to you if you have any issues with them. That's a quick demo. I don't have time to go through everything that we offer as a company, but I do encourage you to check out what we have. Really feel free to ping me if you have any questions at all about testing and monitoring, or just voice apps in general. So with that, any questions?
Hey, John, yes, we have some. You see it on the chat. The first one is from Christian. He said, like, how do you put in place a unit testing if your bot could potentially respond to 1,000 of questions? So I imagine the script you just showed, you can add thousands of questions or interactions, no? Possible.
If you have thousands of questions, you can set up a script that would run through thousands of questions. Now, I will say, like you may have noticed there, that the interaction is kind of slow because it is as if you're actually talking to it. So if you came to me, and I've talked to other people about this as a hypothetical, but we haven't implemented it yet, or we haven't done this for anyone, but if you said, oh, I want to test thousands of slots or questions, we can actually parallelize that. And so it's as if we set up 100 virtual devices and we would talk to them all at the same time. And that's how you get through thousands of questions relatively quickly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the next one is more like a concern about data privacy. Perhaps I take this then to the next session with Mark, but more than happy if you make a comment about what about data privacy? Is Amazon recording each interaction?
Yes, Amazon is recording the interactions. They don't share, though, that audio with people that are third-party developers. So you as a third-party developer don't have access to that. You don't even have access to the transcript, which is somewhat controversial. So it's, there's privacy considerations, but I don't think they're terrible for that way.
Yeah, and then I have an own questions, meaning like can you like test as well possible attacks? You know, because we heard a lot of misusing like voice devices, and do you can test this as well, or is it more as you said, like unit testing or functional testing, and not more like attacks or misuse?
So I haven't heard of that many exploits with voice apps so far. I was actually just reading an article about somebody predicting that this year will be the first virus for voice. The specific scenarios that they came up with, I don't think were actual attack vectors. I'm still not quite sure what those attack vectors are. We probably could use our stuff for it, but I mean, we just have to see what the exploits look like.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so time is running. So thanks again, John, for being with us. Thanks very much for your insights. And yes, as you said, I'm happy for follow-ups, questions, comments about your services or your experience. You're available on different platforms to reach out.
Yeah, so absolutely. I'm going to put the slides into the Slack channel. So anybody who wants to take a look at it afterwards, please.
Absolutely. Okay, yeah, so we are already heading to our last session on the bottish. Thanks again, John, and stay in touch. Wishing you all the best, and yeah, talk to you soon again.
Yeah, wonderful. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thanks.